Welcome everyone to Legion Gaming. I'm your host Donnie, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Dusail.
Hello, everyone.
Dusail, episode 85. We are on the 85th freaking episode of this podcast. How are you doing today?
I am good. I am rejuvenated thanks to that sudden vacation that I took over the last 2 or 3 weeks.
That is true.
Yeah. Thank you, Vito. I was like, oh, okay. I guess I'll sit back and relax and get some errands done.
It worked out. He's sort of like the unofficial third member of sorts now, because we do these offshoot episodes, and we did a great Die Hard episode where we covered some of the movies, which is really the core movies that most people like anyway. Like the fourth and fifth movie aren't bad. Actually, I don't like the fifth one that much. But
I don't remember it.
Yeah, I don't remember it either. I just remember I didn't like it that much. And then we covered most of the games, which very, very weird set of games. Like there's some awkward ones, there's some interesting ones, and it ended on a fart, unfortunately, with Die Hard Vendetta. But I thought it was a really fun episode.
I was intrigued by your coverage of the Nintendo game, which I didn't even know existed until a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was very late into my life before I realized, wait, there's a Die Hard. I even missed the AVGN episode.
Oh back. Wow, that's surprising, because that's like one of his more infamous ones. But yeah, that game, it's a weird one, because with so many movie-based games on the Nintendo, that one is kind of the awkward one that isn't as well known for whatever reason. Maybe because it is pretty rare. You know, like we were talking about, it's like $200 or $300 now. But it's weird. It's like of all the other movie games, that one I think has the best idea, but it also has like the similar poorly execution, because it's just hard. Yeah, that's really my biggest criticism for it.
It sounded ahead of its time, the way Vito was describing all of the hidden things you could do just to get like better endings or something.
Yeah, it's really cool. But yeah, that was a fun time. And then today for episode 85, we're doing something a little bit different, where we're covering the launch of the NES, and we're going to be covering a bit of the pre-launch, which is really just sort of the gaming crash that Nintendo was able to take full advantage of and sort of recalibrate what was defined as gaming, because there's a lot of interesting history there. And we're going to kind of reminisce about some of the games that came out, and also the actual launch of the NES, and then anything else that kind of comes to mind. But also episode 85, it makes sense, Ducey, as you suggested, that as it released in 1985, it makes sense for episode 85 to cover the Nintendo. So I think it'll be a pretty fun episode.
Yeah, I had this idea, and also I thought about like the original Mario, because it's the 40th anniversary of
40th anniversary for a lot of series, actually.
Yeah,
this year.
last year and this year now.
Yeah.
With the new Mario movie just coming out, figured why not go back to the origins of why everybody knows Mario and has Mario on the tongue and everything.
The reason we have the 2 Mario movies, the reason, 3, technically with the original, but as far as like everyone enjoying the new Mario movies, like this is really the reason why Mario still exists. And it is pretty incredible that it's 4 decades later that Mario is still prevalent, persistent, and very, very, very popular. Even so much that there's all kinds of 40th anniversary celebrations going on. Like there's like a cool steelbook they released. There's like a pin set I got from my Nintendo with those silly platinum points.
Oh,
so it's sort of just the year of Mario in one way or another.
Yeah.
Before we get to all the good stuff, Ducey, what have you been playing?
I've been playing a lot since I had this time off, and in fact, since I last was on here, I beat Resident Evil 9 again.
That seems like it's a record for you, for especially that quickly.
Yeah, this is the second time in less than 2 months since it's been released.
Yeah, I'm still chipping away at classic mode, but I expected you to finish it because you were pretty glued to that one.
Yeah, the first run through was on what do they call that?
I think it's just casual.
Yeah. That one. I knew it started with a C. And then I played it on standard normal, which is no ink ribbon still.
That's the one I did, yeah, which I thought was balanced pretty well. I think the difficulty is pretty reasonable on normal.
I was a little surprised because I have a couple bonus things because of my first run through, but it didn't help all that much, because I was still like, the enemies are now tougher and they will bite you less times before you die. I actually died a couple times this time to actual like zombie attacks rather than environmental stuff. But my finishing time this time was 12:44.
Wow, that's still. I mean, that's considerably lower than your original time.
I cut off 6 hours.
It's funny. It's still longer than both mine and Vito's.
Well, I felt like I was going through it at a really good pace, like through the Grace stuff in the beginning, and every time I hit Raccoon City, and especially the police department, I just like stop and look around.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was playing. I played a little bit of Crimson Desert that you and Vito talked about in the last episode.
Yeah, I've been chipping away a little bit at that. Yeah.
I started that, but I didn't get too far into it because I was determined on finishing Resident Evil a second time. And You know, I really like it. I know what you guys talked about, like, oh, probably won't finish it. There's just so much to do. The map is huge. And I'm like, this feels like it could be, if I really focus, it could be my next Skyrim. Where
That's exactly how I kind of feel about the game.
Like I never finished that, but
which
I did a ton.
Yeah, like I would say, like it's not negative because frankly, like I couldn't give a shit about the story in this game. Like I don't really know what's going on necessarily. Yeah. Like there's a lot of medieval speak and high fantasy stuff, and it's totally fine. But the game is just so fun that like I'm fine if I don't finish it. Like I'm definitely going to try to. But there's so many distractions in this game.
I did find it interesting that it is medieval times, but there are some like regular swear words and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
it's
oh, okay.
The language is oddly modern. Like they use a lot of sort of a cursing that I wouldn't expect in this kind of game. But it also has like a little bit of sci-fi too.
Yeah.
Once you get to like the abyss in the sky, and then I'm finally getting to a point where it's starting to get the story's actually getting a little bit more interesting now because now I've gone to a group of scholars, and one's doing an experiment, and he got lost in this void, like he got sucked into a void. So there's that sort of twist to the story. But it's a super slow game, but it's actually I'm enjoying it because it feels like it wants you to take your time with it.
And my different perspective, which you guys didn't bring up in the last one, is that I've gone around and tried to find as many cats as possible.
I figured you would do that. That's probably what sold you on the game to begin with.
Yes, cats, and there's also some dogs. You can pet the dogs.
I know, and apparently you can get a dog pet, so I'm looking for a Luna parallel at some point.
Nice.
Yeah.
I also, what else have I been playing? Oh, I played a real quick run through of Star Fox 64 because of the announcement that Fox is in the new movie. That was fun. And it's a little odd though. I played the easy path and I realized, man, easy Venom is actually more difficult than hard Venom on the 64 version.
Venom is hard in general though, because even when I was young, I remember having a little bit of a difficulty there, and sometimes like I'd breeze right through, and sometimes like I would just totally lose it and like what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Like I've beaten this plenty of times, you know.
I also noticed I think the sticks are a little different compared to if you're using like the old N64 controller compared to the new Joy-Cons. Like I don't have as easy of a time aiming at certain things that I did back in the day.
Yeah, it's definitely a sensitivity issue.
Yeah,
I've noticed that even in just like with the analog 3D, it's the same thing. Like with that controller, like we got that 8-bit one. That feels like a GameCube stick, and it is kind of awful for an N64 game because it's just like overly sensitive compared to like how the controls are for N64. So it's a little bit of a weird learning curve to adjust to that. And I feel like it's the same case with the N64 Switch stuff when you use like a non N64 controller. But maybe it's just you and I just have like the
muscle memory.
Yeah, the muscle memory burning on memory. So that's why it just feels so weird. Like it's sticking out, but it shouldn't be a sticking point.
Last but not least, I tried this free game that you pointed out to me called Graveyard Keeper.
Yes.
It is hilarious and awesome. It's like Stardew Valley, but you are keeping a grave. And you have to like it's very weird. You were a living guy in modern times, you die, and now you're in this other realm and you're taking over for a gravekeeper that hasn't been around in a while. Like the townsfolk all knew that there would be a gravekeeper eventually, so they're just like, hey, here you go, here's what you have to do. And you're sitting there going, hey, I have a life to get back to. And they're like, no, do this first. But it's very trippy. You have to like you get bodies delivered, you have to cut them up and take their meat and possibly sell it to the local village.
Yeah, it seemed very macabre in like a very cheeky way.
Yeah.
And I had seen this game when it came out, and it got really good reviews, and I just, I kind of forgot about it. I know it was on Game Pass for a little bit, then it got taken off, but they were giving it for free. So he was like, dude, so you should check this out because it feels like it's right up your alley. It's like you said, Stardew, but with sort of a more of a macabre horror aspect to it, but also very tongue-in-cheek with some of the humor.
Yeah, and I know I'm going to really get to it. This one feels a little more hand-holdy at first than Stardew did. Like Stardew was like, here's some seeds, make a farm. Whereas this one, they really want to show you everything you could potentially do. And I'm still going through the steps in that before I know I'm going to get just like let go of at some point. And this one, not only do you keep a grave and you have to like polish up the tombstones and make your graveyard look better, but you can also farm and stuff too. It's weird.
Yeah, it does look really cool. I'm hoping to start that at some point because I did claim it on Steam and PS4 because I'm like, it's free everywhere. Like, why
Yeah.
may as well. Plus, you know, it's probably great on the Steam Deck, but now I have the PS Portal, so I could play Graveyard Keeper on there too. But it's pretty cool that they just gave it out for free, and they announced a second game, which I don't know. I think it's coming out sometime this year. But you know, at that point, it's like you already got the first game. You'll probably be occupied with that for a little while. Maybe by the time you get through the first game, the second one's free too, or something.
This one has like upgrade trees and stuff, and the amount of stuff that's in it, I can't see finishing it before the second one comes out.
I imagine it's just like a typical life sim where it's just, you know, you don't necessarily finish it. Like you might sort of, maybe there's sort of an endpoint to the story, but then there's like, you know, it's still continuing. Like you're still managing a cemetery, and that doesn't necessarily end because, you know, I'm sure that people are still dying in that game no matter what.
Yep.
Yeah. For what I've been playing, well, we covered Crimson Desert, which I've been enjoying more and more as time goes on. I do like the combat in this game a lot, and also like the exploration, just the mobility it gives you, like, you know, to fly around. I think that helps a lot, and it's also great that you can basically just scale wherever the hell you want. Like if you see a giant mountain, much like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, you can probably scale up that thing in some way. It might take a while with your stamina.
I do agree with Vito that some of the more basic movement things are a little odd.
Super clunky is what they are, yeah.
And so, but I've gotten used to like just holding L1 for everything, and then like if I want to jump, I just aim at it with L1 and hopefully the jump action pops up. Did you also see that you originally really couldn't fly in that game? It was sort of a weird glitch.
They patched it.
Yeah, and then they were like, well, if everybody's doing it, let's add an animation for it.
Yeah, so the developers have been really good about patching things and you know, sort of adjusting things. Like they've done a few patches already, and the game's been out for like 2 or 3 weeks, but they've been doing some really meaningful stuff, which is great. Like you no longer have to mash sprint, you can just hold it. The flying consumes less sprint or less stamina. And also one gimmick I like with the flying is that if you cut your cape and you just free fall, you recover stamina while you're free flying. So it's sort of another way you can kind of, you know, extend your flight in a way. So they're doing a lot. And then one of the silliest things I found was that you don't have to like tap the attack buttons. Apparently you just hold.
Oh,
did you know this?
No.
Okay. So the combat is, I mean, it's not terribly difficult to begin with, but it's so much easier when you just hold R1 or R2. Like you kind of like hold R1, it does a few attacks, switch to R2 minute animation, it'll continue to attack. So that makes it a lot easier when you're dealing with crowds. You're not like kind of trying to time your combos like I'm used to.
But you have to let go to like start parrying and stuff, right? Like
yeah, but I think you have enough room and enough enough sort of time between animations to parry if you want to, because I usually just hold L1 to kind of like keep my guard up. Yeah. And also, you know, hold R1 to slash through. But I was shocked to find that, because I was like, wow, this is suddenly a lot easier when I'm not trying to time these things. Because there's times where I would hit R1 or try to, you know, hit this like a multi-hit combo, and I'm like, something's not right. Like I keep interrupting myself, and then I was like, oh, you can hold it, and it just does all the attacks for you.
Just an auto combo.
Yeah. But it's a really cool game. I've been really enjoying it. But you know, like we've drilled in already, it's just one of those games where it's really, really massive. There's just a lot of stuff to discover, a lot of distractions from, like, you know, if you really want to, you could catch bugs. I don't know what they're used for. I think they're used for alchemy at some point. Yeah. Right. And then there's just so many, just these little microsystems that I probably haven't even discovered yet. Yeah. And there's also this whole aspect where when you clear out strongholds, each stronghold might have a mission that you might send one of your comrades to go finish, like to, you know, start a construction project so you could build, I don't know, you could build stuff in this game for, I don't know what you do with the strongholds, but it's just, there's so many nested systems that I feel like I haven't even touched yet, and I don't know if the game's going to show me them. But it's just, it's a really cool game. It's almost overwhelming, but I also, like I said in the last episode, where maybe it's not for everybody, it's a little bit divisive, because I feel like you do have to kind of get over the initial slow hump of the game. And once you do that, it does get kind of going. Like I'm like 10 or 12 hours in, and it's like, it feels like it's starting to get, you know, starting to speed up in a proper way that's not just like a little bit of a slog to travel around and everything.
I haven't even really fought anybody. I've been in it so long, and I haven't fought anybody since the initial like tutorial fight and everything. And so I've just been exploring. I went down underneath. I think it was part of the story in the tutorial missions. And then I do enjoy how they kind of weave the story missions into everything else you could possibly be doing.
Yeah, so that helps a lot.
You don't even realize that you accidentally did a story mission to progress the game.
Yeah, and it does help, because I don't know how big the story is. I think I'm on chapter 4 or 5, and I have no idea how big it is, but you know, again, like this game is so massive that it's nice that you can technically trigger a side quest and it somehow might fold into the main quest or contribute to it.
Yeah.
So there is that to it. It's just, again, I'm looking forward to what they're going to do with this game because it just feels like they're patching it and adding stuff. So I'm sure they're going to add more tweaks that's going to make it even better. But it's a great game. Like I know it's not, you know, my expectations were tempered before this game. Like I knew it looked pretty good, but I wasn't like how I saw some perception on there, like people being blown away and, you know, it's going to revolutionize open world games. Like I don't think so. Like I think it's going to be a really great game, but not with like I don't think it's like a top 5 open world game or something like that, you know?
I'm glad though. A lot of people also said it was going to be like another Dark Souls-esque game, and I was like,
oh yeah, no,
I haven't.
Not the case so far.
Luckily, I was a little hesitant on getting it, but so far combat and stuff hasn't been that brutal.
Yeah, they're adding a harder difficulty, I think, in a future patch for people who do want that. But I agree with you. Like, I'm glad this isn't like a Dark Souls game because that could be a real showstopper pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You know, like if you get to a boss and you're like, well, I can't progress the main story. I guess I'm gonna do a bunch of side quests until then or something, right?
I'll just stay in camp and cook.
Yeah, yeah. One smaller game I got into that I found online was Yars Rising. It's a reimagining or sort of a reboot. It's a Metroidvania reboot of do you remember Yars Revenge on the Atari 2600?
I mean, I know the name and I've never understood how to play it.
Me neither. So I had it when I was a kid, and because my dad had it, and it's just shoot 'em up. It's just sort of a basic shoot 'em up on the Atari 2600. But this is cool because it's a Metroidvania with like this. It has like a pop anime stick, which I'm not too crazy about, but it's way forward. Which they did Contra 4, Shantae. I think they did the Mummy Demastered. I don't know if that was them as well, but they're really good with 2D games is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So, you know, the art style, while I'm not too hot on it, it's really well realized, but it's cool because the hacking in this game are actually Yars levels. So it's like each one is sort of like a different WarioWare challenge in a sense where it says like, you know, nibble away at the shield around this, the weak points and then, you know, send the beam across to kill it. So it's just like these hacking mini games that are under the guise of a Yars game. Really cool. I think it's like $20. You know, it's not, I'd say it's like a totally average Metroidvania so far. Like it's just the platforming is fine. The combat's just fine, but it's been a really fun time and a good distraction for like while I'm watching a movie or a TV show or something like that. And then the last game, of course, I've been diving into lately because they released a new character is Street Fighter 6.
Oh,
that's something where, you know me, Deucey. Like if I could just sit there for like an hour or two just to chip away a few matches or whatever.
I didn't realize they were still releasing characters.
Yeah, they're in year 3, and the newest character they just released is Alex from Street Fighter 3, and then the next one is Ingrid from she was in Street Fighter Alpha 3. She was like a bonus character in one of those games. I forgot where she's technically. I think she's the original character, but she looks like she's out of Darkstalkers or something like that. But you know, Street Fighter 6, that's like my bread and butter. So it's one of those things where I haven't played it in like 8 months just because I haven't, because I've been playing so much other stuff. But every time I get into Street Fighter, it's just really easy for me to just dive into. And I've been leveling up my Dalsum because he's really fun to play in this game. And a lot of people I don't think know how to play against Dalsum, so it's fun to navigate those people. And then I get the people who know how to play against Dalsum where they just rush them down. I'm like, oh, well, I'm kind of screwed because you know exactly what to do against me. I can't do anything. So it's a fun dichotomy with Dalsum, but he's definitely one of the more fun characters to play in Street Fighter 6. So I've been having a great time with that.
You mentioned your bread and butter, and I just realized that I had one more game I played, and it was Tetris Forever.
Oh, that's right. You did tell me you bought that. Yeah. I've been meaning to start this because I've had it for a long time because it's part of a Digital Eclipse's Gold series. Like they're sort of documentary games that are really cool.
Yeah, I finally saw it on sale on Switch, and I was like, I really need this because it's Tetris. And I haven't even really gotten into the documentary portions of it yet, but I've been playing some of the old versions of it, and I was just kind of blown away by the beginnings of it because, I mean, when I was little, I only knew the Nintendo version and then obviously the Game Boy version. And I remember my uncle had on his work computer, he had a version on that. It was on Windows something, which I don't know if that version is even in this game, but I was like, those are the only 3 Tetrises.
I don't know.
Those are the only 3 that I knew about for the longest time. And so to see like some of these ones that were on MS-DOS, and I even played the original Famicom version, which you would think is similar to the Nintendo one, but no, not at all. And like in that one, down on the D-pad is to switch the block around, to flip it around, and then
that's so awkward.
Pushing A drops it, which to wrap your head around that, I was dropping too many in the wrong places. But luckily this game is interesting. Like you can hold the pause menu and it brings up the modern menu of options, and you can actually individually change all the buttons. So all of the games could feel like a modern Tetris if you wanted it to.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's essentially a chronology of the history of Tetris, from what I understand. Like, it's really just it's presented in a documentary format, and they did this with the Atari collection and just everything else. Like, Digital Clips does some really cool historical gaming stuff. But Tetris Forever has this gimmick where it's like it goes through the history of Tetris. Then there's like interviews and videos interspersed between them. Then each version of the game is in there as well. I don't know how many are in here, but it's just, again, it's really cool to play those other versions because, like you know, we played the versions growing up, like from the DS, the NES, probably Super Nintendo, whatever else. So it's like all those pre-NES ones are a total blind spot, and it's really cool to see Tetris's origins before like it really blew up with like the NES.
There's a version in there, I forgot what it was for, if it was Famicom or DOS, but every time you clear a line, you then get a block of bombs. And then you can put those anywhere and clear out a few more blocks.
Oh, is that what version was that?
I don't know. It's not one of the bombless ones, because I know there's a bunch of those. This one really was just like Tetris or Super Tetris or something like that. And I just was like, whoa, this is awesome, because you can still do the two lines up to a Tetris, and then you just get more and more bombs in a square, and you have to knock them down. And then as you're clearing lines, a picture is coming up from the bottom, and you don't clear the level until the picture is fully visible.
Yeah.
I was like, this is so unique, and it's weird that they didn't like keep it for other versions.
It is weird, but then Tetris has had that where it's had that weird sort of history of itself where it's been released so many times, and some of the criticisms are like, well, it's just Tetris. And then they try to reinvent it in some way.
And people don't quite like it.
Yeah, and it's understandable too, because sometimes you try to reinvent the wheel and you add stuff you don't need to add to or something, but sometimes it's just fine to have just Tetris. But, you know, like Tetris Effect to me is like sort of the pinnacle now, because they've done so much with the visuals in that it's like it's a new way to present Tetris. But again, that's what's great about Tetris, that you can sort of dress it in a bunch of different ways, in a bunch of different unique ways, and it's still great because it's Tetris.
Yep.
All right, dude, so I guess that's a great segue to get into Nintendo, is ending it with Tetris there. So let's go ahead and talk about the Nintendo here for episode 85. All right, Juicy, we're here. We're going back to 1985, and actually a little bit earlier than that, because we're going to be covering sort of the video game crash leading up to the Famicom release, the launch of the Nintendo in the US, and then, of course, talking about all the great stuff that we enjoyed on the NES, which we did our top 10 NES games way back in episode 2, which is crazy. So we won't rehash too many of those games. This is really just... you know, we're going to be talking about like all the great stuff that we grew to love on the NES, and also just really like why the NES took off the way it did. And a lot of it has to do with sort of the prehistory, as I'll call it, which is the gaming crash of the early 80s. Because there was a lot going on. Like there's the arcades, there's gaming was getting a bigger thing, and then all of a sudden it just imploded. And then at that point, gaming was nearly dead. And all of a sudden, Nintendo comes out with this brand new system that they don't want to sort of brand as a video game system. And it set the world on fire. Gaming was never the same after that.
It's funny, like one of the big reasons for the crash here is going to be a flood of games. Like there was just no there's
no quality control, no oversight, and it was basically just like quite literally like the Wild West of gaming at the time, where it's like if you could program a game, no matter how crappy or how inexperienced you are, it was probably going to be released.
And it was going to go into various stores, some stores not even like known for holding games, and then they just like accidentally crammed their warehouses full of these games. And then it got me thinking about recently, like we've been seeing clips from our group chats and stuff about Magic the Gathering and how that is starting to get flooded.
It's starting to get very bloated. Yeah. All the Universes Beyond stuff and just the massive releases. And that's what happens. Like that's the capitalistic world we live in, right? Where it's like they see that they're making money off something. So it's like flood the market with more. People want more. And then sometimes there's macroeconomical factors where it's like that stuff ends up failing, doesn't sell well, and all of a sudden, you know, they're laying people off, products go out of production, and it's just a crazy world. And it was even happening obviously since 80s.
And as far as games go, it's happening again. If you look at like all the eShops and the online stores,
delistings, and
there's just so much like schlock on there now. But like it's not crashing the the market at least.
It's I mean, because now obviously it's a little bit more regulated, right? Like there's publisher agreements, there's other things. Like granted, like Steam and Xbox, Switch, like you could release a game. Like there's a lot of AI garbage on there now, but they are trying to mitigate it and like get rid of it. But it's like at the same time, like, you know, when you got like a fire hose blasting at you and you have like someone trying to filter it through, it's really difficult. So I don't think we're at the point of this kind of a crash, because this was like sort of, at this point, like gaming was still relatively new. It's just they wanted to sort of capitalize on the excitement and the popularity, and they did too much.
Yeah, there wasn't as big a market for it. Like now you can flood the market with games, and there's an equal number of people that enjoy playing games and have these consoles.
Yeah.
Whereas back then, not a whole lot of people had the consoles, and it was all physical. Like it was taking up space in warehouses.
Exactly. Now with digital distribution, that has changed everything, really, because back then, as we get into, like, it's just retail space is a thing.
Yeah.
And when you have like a dozen different console systems and then, you know, dozens upon dozens of hundreds of games, it's a whole different story there. So it's a really interesting story, because again, like the crash of the 80s, of the gaming crash of the 80s, really sort of allowed Nintendo to reposition itself, and that's, I think, is what led to its success and sort of revitalizing the gaming industry. So there's a lot to kind of get through. So what we're doing today is we're kind of talking about the, like I said, the prehistory of the NES, the launch of the Famicom, and how it, you know, that kind of took hold in Japan, and then how the popularity of the Famicom ultimately led to this new form of entertainment in the US. A few of the factors that were that led to the crash was the oversaturation of the console and gaming market. Companies were rushing to release as many games as quickly as possible, and that's always a bad thing, because that just also means that quality is not really a factor. It's just how much can we sell? Because at the same time, like, you know, we talked about this in other episodes too, and just sort of a general gaming thing back then is that you would get sold on the front or the back of the box. And if you bought it and it was crap, you would hope you could return it, or you were stuck with it because your parents were like, no, you made the decision. That was $50, right? That's what it is. And then that kind of leads into the whole publishing becoming a huge mess, because everyone was releasing games. Like you didn't really have any licensing. Again, like if you managed to create a game and have distribution and production, you were releasing games on the Atari or wherever else. And of course, the one other factor that was, I don't know how big of a factor this really was, but it definitely chipped away at the gaming industry, was the rise of personal computers. Like those were becoming a little bit more affordable. And by affordable, I mean like they were $1,500 in 1980s money. Oof. But at the same time, like, you know, the positioning there was, this thing can play all the games, plus it has my word processing and accounting and whatever else.
It's funny that back then the computers and the consoles were, I feel like, a little closer in graphics and ability.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of the consoles were still also computers. They had their own keyboards and stuff. But it wasn't until after Nintendo came out, then all of a sudden PC sort of jumped ahead.
Yeah.
In the graphics and everything, and felt more like arcade experiences on the PC.
Well, and also that was the introduction of, like, you know, operating systems too. Like Windows changed a lot.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole thing too. It's like when that happened, then, you know, more programs became a thing. Then it became a lot easier for people to get into computers because they had a proper user interface versus DOS or command line stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we'll give a little bit of prehistory of the consoles. One of the earliest home consoles was the Magnavox Odyssey, which came out in 1972. The Odyssey showcased this potential for an interactive entertainment, which was a totally different thing. I think this is the system that actually had the overlays on the TV, if I recall. I can't recall.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it's like you had these beams of lights, and like you had to use your imagination a lot.
Didn't you have to put something on your TV?
Yeah, it was like a sticky, see-through, like transparent piece of plastic.
Yeah.
And each of those were sort of like your playing field, because you couldn't display graphics of like, edges or walls or stuff like that. So really use your imagination with these things. So that was way back in 1972. I don't think I've ever played an Odyssey. I imagine you haven't either, right? Like I've seen videos, of course, and some history about it, but it's just one of those blind spots for me, because no one I knew owned it, because by then it's like a much older system, and 1972 is pretty freaking early for a gaming console.
The earliest thing I ever played was the Atari 2600. My dad had it, and the first one I played was Nintendo, but then we went back and played my dad's Atari because his sister had it, and I, at the time, did not realize that there were so many other things. I was just like, oh, it went from Atari to Nintendo.
That's how I felt. Absolutely.
And then there was like, I think Nintendo is part of the third generation, they say?
I believe so, because
Third or
technically, if we
fourth?
want to call Odyssey as the first,
Yeah.
and then Atari as the second, it makes sense that Nintendo's technically the third generation.
And like Nintendo to me is always going to be the first generation, but there were these other like generations before it that were playing very basic stuff. And, like Atari 2600. If anybody's seen screenshots, that was an improvement.
It was. It's a massive improvement. Like there's actually a few extra colors on there, because that's the thing that Odyssey was black and white. It was like I said, just like usually almost like a cursor on your screen, on a black screen.
Light on or light off.
Yeah. So gaming really wasn't hitting mainstream until around 1977 when Atari released the Atari 2600. It's called the VCS back then. I think it just stood for Video Computer System, something like that. And this popularized the swappable cartridges, which was a big thing because that meant that, you weren't locked to where it was on the hardware. Now you could buy these cartridges that had different software on them and swap them in and out. They probably were, I don't know what they were. They're probably like $30 to $50 at the time. I should have looked it up, but I'm assuming they're probably around there at the time. And the 2600 was a huge hit. It totally dominated the console market. And by 1982, because of the success of the 2600, that's when all these other manufacturers from different companies start releasing their own systems, which again kind of leads to the oversaturation of the gaming market, where
even Atari themselves brought out the 5200.
Yeah, they had the 5200 and then the 7800 later, which I think was after NES, if I recall. But around 1982, there was the Odyssey 2, so Magnavox tried again. There's the Intellivision, ColecoVision, the Atari 5200, and the Vectrex, which I have no familiarity with at all. I think I might have played a ColecoVision when I was a kid, but I can't fully remember.
That one is the only other one I've seen out in the wild.
Yeah, right. That one feels like it's one of the more popular ones next to the Commodore 64, which is technically considered a PC.
I feel like ColecoVision was big in Europe, I want to say.
It might have been. Or there's also the, as they call it, the ZX Spectrum, which I don't know where that falls in the timeline, but I think that's probably early 80s pre-SNES or somewhere around there.
Yeah, for before Nintendo.
Yeah. So again, when you're going to the store and you see upwards of like 6, 7, 8 consoles available, and they all have their own games, right? Because these aren't like backwards compatible. It's just they manufactured their own sort of ecosystem in a way. It makes sense that at some point there's just gonna be too many games and not enough players to play them. Also, these things could be costly, like not everyone could afford them.
I think the 5200 bombed, and I can't remember exactly why. I feel like it wasn't that much of an improvement over 26.
I want to say that
and it wasn't backwards.
Yeah, I don't remember. It wasn't because it had different size cards. I think the 7800 was backwards compatible with the 2600, which is really crazy.
They were smart. They were like, oh, people still like the 2600. Whoops.
Yeah. So that's sort of the amount of consoles available at the time is partly what led to the crash, but also there was a few other factors. So one thing that got under Atari's sort of radar was the fact that they really lost control of publishing, because like we talked about, you didn't need licensing at this point. So it's just, if you could create a game and you had the means to, Atari at this time, or for a certain time, didn't care what was released on there, because I think to them, they probably feel like, well, it's like, if we have more software, that's more compelling for people to buy, and that just means more variety, right? And it turns out it's not the case, because when you just let everyone make their games, quality control goes out the window. So Atari actually tried to sue companies about this, and it wasn't until like 1979 when Activision had been created by former Atari programmers, because they thought that developers should get credit like they do in the movies and TV shows, which I totally agree with. Like, you're artists in some regard, with your software engineering, creative, or whatever else. You should get credit for things you're making, and also that things that are making money for the company you work for in some way.
Yeah.
So Atari did try to sue Activision because they were sort of the first third-party publisher, which is incredible because Activision still exists today, and they publish a ton of games, and now they've merged with Blizzard, and they're one of the biggest conglomerates as far as gaming ever right now, with Call of Duty and like Diablo and Overwatch. It's really crazy.
Mostly Call of Duty.
Mostly Call of Duty, yeah. At this point, the that lawsuit didn't really go far, because the settlement would ended up to where Activision would have to pay royalties to Atari. So that was like the earliest days of third-party publishing, where Nintendo would popularize this, where they would take a fee for production and licensing, and they pay to the licensor essentially, and that's kind of like the first instance with Activision and Atari. But by 1982, at the Summer CES show, which is a Consumer Electronics Show, this was like a big sort of think E3, but like for computers and home tech.
Yeah.
It was estimated that there was 90 Atari games shown, and then by then there was like dozens of new publishers just showcasing other games.
Could you imagine at an E3
Yeah, 90
if
games.
there was like 90 Nintendo games being shown?
It's really insane. And there's estimates saying that there was upwards of 50 different companies that were vying for market space in 1983, and a lot of them were just producing millions of carts. Like they really didn't. I don't know what they thought. Like, I don't know if they thought that maybe because maybe it was cheap to produce. I have no idea what the instance was, but they just decided to make as many games as possible. And even Atari apparently created 60 million carts in 1982. And it was believed that it was 200% over the actual demand of carts. So that means that there's like twice as many carts as there are people who want these damn things.
Yeah.
So think about that. Like 60 million games, like I think one of the top selling games now you could kind of point to is like Pokemon. It always sells like 20 plus million. Tears of the Kingdom sold like 20 plus million. Think about that with like Nintendo and Switch being like one of the best selling systems ever. And then Atari was doing 60 million carts in 1982.
And I mean, the difference is like, these are sales. These are known people wanted, like 20 million people wanted a Pokemon or a Zelda.
Exactly.
Whereas Atari was just like, maybe 60 million will want this game.
It could be like, you want a bunch of games. It's great. Yeah. 60 million. It's fine. It's really wild that it got that out of control, because that's a lot of games. Again, like retail space is finite. Like it's not like digital distribution. Like retail stores are very selective of what they're carrying because they have to carry what sells. And if they have a bunch of overstock that's not going to sell, then they're just wasting space and revenue.
Like I said, a lot of these places weren't specific to gaming. Like you could find it at a Macy's or something.
Yeah,
and
Sears.
And they have so much stock of other things that they don't have the space for millions of games.
Yeah, yeah. And then personal computers, like we mentioned, that was starting to bubble up. They became affordable more in the late 70s. And by the early 80s, Atari and IBM both had different systems available. So by 1981, IBM was offering a system for $1,500. And the Atari 400, actually, I should say that it was $1,500 to start in 1981. That's about $5,600 today. So think about that. Like you're almost $5,000 on a PC, which if you're getting a high-end PC these days, not that far off when a graphics card could be as much as $3,000 now. It's crazy. And then the Atari 400 was released for $350, which is around $1,300 today. I'm sure that's a much less feature-rich system compared to one of the IBM ones. And also, like we mentioned, PCs offered much more sophisticated graphics and more impressive games. And also on the fact that like it was more centered around families, where it's like, mom and dad could handle their bookkeeping and then the kids could play their games or something on there. And that kind of led to the crash here. So it was estimated that that the gaming industry had shrunk by 97%. It went from like a $3.2 billion industry to around $100 million, which $100 million sounds like a lot, but when you have that much shrinkage, as I'll say, it's really crazy, because that means that the gaming industry is sort of obliterated at this point. Like we mentioned, retailers just didn't have enough space for all the consoles and systems, so they would eventually do like a fire sale for them. Like you get games for like $5, $10. Like this is probably the most bargain stuff you could get at the time, I would think.
Damn.
Yeah, I know we totally missed that.
Yeah, if only we were there.
Yeah. And then also some of the more notorious flops that also contribute to the crash were games like E.T., which I owned as a kid because my dad had it. And I remember playing this game and like I didn't know what it was about, because frankly, I'm not a big E.T. movie fan. Like I understand its importance in movie history, but it was never like one of my favorite movies growing up as a kid. But I played the game and I was like, I don't know much about E.T., but I know that this is not it.
Yeah. I don't remember the part where he keeps falling into a pit.
Yeah, and there's a guy in a raincoat stalking you for some reason. And this game is just a tragic mess, because the idea behind this is that they wanted to get this out in time for the holidays. They gave Howard Scott Warsaw, who coincidentally also programmed Yars' Revenge, which is fun that I was playing Yars Rising, and he's tied to that. He had 6 weeks to literally code E.T. from scratch and get it to production to release. And Atari produced millions of cartridges. They did not sell. No one wanted this game. This is one of the more infamous stories where at some point they just dumped all the carts that they had, the overstock, in the landfill. And that was sort of like a legend for a long time. Like, was that really happening? And then there's a documentary that I think Microsoft co-sponsored or something years back that actually went through the unearthing of the E.T. landfill. And it's really incredible, because it's like, holy crap, they did bury these things. It's really incredible. And there's also stuff like poor ports of arcade games like Pac-Man.
I think that one was a big nail in the coffin, because like with E.T., it was an all new original thing. people didn't know what to expect, and then they came out and it was crap. But Pac-Man was already Pac-Man, and like the arcade edition was amazing. People loved that. That was like the top seller for arcade cabinets.
It's one of the most successful arcade games of all time. It's probably up there with like Asteroids for its time as far as like as much money as it made.
Yeah, and then you see the version they made on Atari, and you were like, "Oh, people needed to look at this."
I had that version too, and you know, I remember playing it when I was like 9 years old, and I didn't think it was that bad because I don't think I had any other version of Pac-Man. But you know, it's like they're not dots. I think they almost look like dashes or hyphens you eat up. And Pac-Man's like not quite circular. He's kind of like oblong.
He's like oval. A football.
Yeah, and you know, it's not a great port. So it's like when you have again like quality control was a major miss with the Atari. All of these factors just led to the gaming industry just bottoming out because no one was buying these things. There was too many games released, too many systems, not enough retail shelves, and people of just like today, like they have limited money. They can't spend their money on every console that comes out or every game that comes out. And like I remember games like there was like a Porky's game that came out. There was I think Captain Crunch had one. Oh no, Captain Crunch, the oatmeal guy.
Oh, Quaker Oats.
Quaker Oats had a game on there.
Holy crap!
Yeah.
Well, you didn't need that many colors.
I know. I guess you just need red and blue and like white hair or something. I don't even know what the game was about.
God, wasn't Custer's Revenge on Atari?
Yeah, that's one of the more notorious sort of porn games on there, and that's also very, we'll say politically incorrect.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty insane. You can look that up on your own if you don't know, but I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have heard it. And actually, I think the Angry Video Game Nerd also did an episode that included Custer's Revenge on there as well.
It's surprising, though, how many good games Atari did still have. In amongst all of this slop, you had like classics like Frogger and
Defender was really great on there.
What was there was a little racing one where you went up. Was it pole position?
There is pole position. Well, pole position, I think it was the one where you're driving like on a flat track. I think,
nice.
If I recall, I don't remember it, but there was one game I liked called Megalomaniac where you plays like this duck that was almost like a shooter, like a shoot 'em up. You know, it's like we're being really dire about the crash of it, but it's like this was successful for a long time, right? Like this really popularized gaming. So it's just we're talking about the crash because leading up to Nintendo, but there were a lot of great hits on the Atari.
These were all the early ones that there's a reason it was $1 billion market.
Yeah.
And then the crap happened.
Yeah. It's like their ego got a little bit too big and they just, they wanted to make as much money as possible. And they just figured flooding the market would be the way to make the most money possible. I don't really thinking the opposite where it's like, where if we have too many choices, and also it could be something where they weren't paying attention to other things in the market, like PCs or so what people were spending their money on, right? And like maybe they weren't listening to retailers who were saying like, hey, like we don't have the space for this crap. Like stop sending us this. We can't order it from you.
Here's our inventory and our numbers, and they are not high.
Yeah, they're selling at $5 each though.
And also, like, when did Atari start making those like all-in-one packs? The ones that were like
the multi games in one cart. I don't know because that's another factor too. It's like when did those start? Because that's a better value, right?
Yeah.
Game 3-4 games, and I remember there's like certain games in multiple versions, like one with art, one without art. So I don't even know how that happened. It's just like I feel like if you went to a retro gaming store and just fished out like a bag of Atari games, you're probably gonna have doubles that don't even look alike for some reason. Yeah, it's really interesting. And of course now they're still dirt cheap. Like that's one of the more collectible systems because it's really inexpensive. But at the same time, like a lot of people aren't really looking for Atari. Like I feel like Nintendo and the NES is like the start for more collectors, right?
Yeah.
Because that's like what most of them grew up with, and it's great if you want to collect Atari. Like I have some Atari stuff, but it's like it's not as big as like my other collections, obviously, right? But if you want to get Atari, it's still dirt cheap and very affordable now. So the U.S. gaming market was essentially, I don't want to say it was totally dead because it still exists in some way, but it was nowhere near as popular as it was. But meanwhile, in Japan, Nintendo is, they were primarily known for like card games and like board games and stuff like that. Like they were really not a
Game & Watch.
And the Game & Watches. So those are like the handheld Tiger equivalents, but I actually think they're better quality than Tiger games, ironically, even though they're much older.
You could do a lot more with them.
Yeah, I feel like I had one that my mom had that she had from like Italy or something. I have to ask her where she probably doesn't know where it is. Actually, I shouldn't even ask her. But we had something that was like that, and we're playing it because it's like the one where you put the pipes. It's like a puzzle game.
Oh, nice.
But again, like I didn't know what it was at the time, and I didn't realize how important Game & Watch was, and that ultimately had an influence on Nintendo as well with its design too. But previous to any kind of console or gaming console, Nintendo was doing like everything but that. It wasn't until the president of Nintendo, Hiroshi Yamauchi, he wanted to create a cheap console that could play arcade games, because Nintendo was in the gaming space then, as far as like Donkey Kong Arcade, which was a huge hit. And
they were putting out arcade games, like cabinets, weren't they?
Yeah, they were doing cabinets and whatnot. So that was their first foray into gaming, and then they decided that they wanted to make a home console that was affordable and cheap, and that could also play the arcade games. And you're never going to have the true arcade to home console experience, but again, in 1983, 84, if you could have any arcade game in your home, you were happy. We were, in the Super Nintendo days and Genesis days, like it was great to have any arcade port, even if it was butcher, if it was a great port, one way or another.
I think Donkey Kong on the Nintendo was the first time I played Donkey Kong.
Same for me. Yeah. Actually, no, I played it on the Atari first. Actually,
oh wow,
and I remember because we owned that one. Yeah, and again, like I couldn't exactly tell you how much better it was than the arcade port, because it felt fine to me at the time. Like I didn't play the arcade for years later. So the hardware of the Famicom was based on Donkey Kong's arcade machine, and the controller was actually reused from Nintendo's own Game & Watch handheld. So that's why we say there's a little bit of an influence there, because the D-pad was not a common thing. Like it was only just joysticks.
It was invented by Nintendo.
Yes.
In fact, in 2007, there's a category in the Emmys for technology and engineering, and it won an Emmy for
the D-pad.
The D-pad design.
I think they call it. Like a cross pad for a little bit, right?
Yeah,
before it became digital pad kind of gimmick.
Yeah, I always thought like, directional pad. Right?
That's right. I thought directional pad. Yeah. So their sort of desire to create a home consoles what led to the home cassette type video game Family Computer, which is sort of the extended name of the Famicom before it was sort of shortened to the Famicom.
I mean, leave it to the Japanese to have like a long title like
it's
that.
A very long title. Yeah, it's like, you own the home cassette type video game Family Computer. Yeah, you want to come over to my house and play it?
You want to play the home cassette type video game Family Computer?
Yeah. So Famicom is just a much simpler name, and also it's really just a short, or portmanteau, I should say, of Family Computer. And that's the idea, is that I think one of the engineers' wife, she had mentioned that like there's a Japanese word for like personal computer, and she thought that if you change it to like Famicom, like Family Computer, that has more appeal because it's for the whole family versus just like,
And you're saying computer.
Computers
are new and hot.
Exactly, yeah. So the Famicom was released July 1983. It costs around 15,000 yen, which is around $94 in today's conversion, but it's also $350 with inflation. So that's about like... still cheaper than a Switch, but relatively expensive. Sega also joined in creating consoles around this time with the Sega SG-1000. Both became a little bit, were I'd say like reasonably popular, but obviously the Famicom just stole a show and just like destroyed everything in its path. Sega had a niche at that time.
I don't even know if I've seen SG-1000 games being played.
I have seen videos of them, and I've seen a console somewhere. I want to say it's at a retro store, but I've never played an SG-1000 because Sega, for me, it started with the Genesis, obviously, but previous to that, it's the Master System. That's like the earliest Genesis recollection that's relative to me, right? So Nintendo, with the Famicom, they want to do the opposite of Atari. They actually made agreements, and they sought out agreements with different companies like Capcom, Konami, Namco, Hudson Soft, and they actually entered license agreements with a lot of these developers. So they would pay... These developers would pay 30% to cover licensing and production. Nintendo's partnership also with these companies solidified the strength of the library, which means that like they could better control the quality, which I think was a big thing that really pushed the gaming industry off its cliff, was like a flood of games, and most of them, I would say, because of the sheer number of them, were probably terrible. And this was sort of Nintendo's way to sort of rein that in. So by Atari's failures, Nintendo's like, look, we saw what they did and how that failed.
Yeah.
What can we do to not do that?
Yeah, our first step shouldn't be what can we make. It's like, how do we stop that and then make that fit in?
Exactly, yeah. So, and that's kind of also what led to, once we get to the launch of the US NES, is like the infamous Nintendo seal of quality, which, hit or miss. They put that thing on everything, and there's some games that probably shouldn't have deserved it on there.
Like no LJN game should have this seal of quality here.
Yeah. So also what the sort of licensing agreements led Nintendo doing was they would restrict publishers from releasing too many games at once. So this is where you'd have that limit of 5 games in a year. But that also led to some publishers and developers getting around it by establishing these sort of like odd subsidiaries. Like Konami had Ultra Games, which created like Metal Gear. Ninja Turtles, I think, was under Ultra.
Yep.
So it's like you'd see Ultra, and it was technically Konami this whole time, which as a kid, I obviously didn't know that either. Like I thought Ultra was Ultra.
Yeah. this also led other companies to just give them the middle finger, like Tengen.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, we'll just make our own games. They don't look like your gray carts at all. And they'll still work on your system. Neener.
And we don't pay 30% out of our pocket for something we did, I guess.
Yeah.
That's the impetus there, yeah. So the Famicom launched with ports of Donkey Kong Jr., and Popeye, and then once it was released, it sold 500,000 units in the first 2 months, which, you know, probably is, I would have to say, has to be like the fastest and best-selling console of the time. Like 500,000 in 2 months in the 80s is huge. By 1985, Nintendo had controlled 90% of the gaming market. So that's something to think about there. It's like the industry had shrunk by 97%. Famicom in Japan launch, and then by 85, just as the NES was releasing in the US, Nintendo had control of 90% of the gaming space. Atari was still existing in some regards. Sega, you had all these smaller, I think everything had just shaken out, right? Like a lot of people weren't making, or I should say a lot of companies weren't making nearly as many consoles as they were because of the crash. And now you have like a select few consoles, and they're all sort of have their own piece of the pie, with Nintendo having the lion's share with 90%, which is really insane. Fun fact for the Famicom, which I didn't know this kind of gave me flashbacks to like the Red Ring of Death and other launch issues. But when the Famicom launched, there's actually a major recall for it because there was an issue that would cause the system to crash under certain specific conditions. I guess there was some issue with the processor or some sort of circuit where certain circumstances came out with math. I guess it would overflow or something. It would just crash it, and the system would just restart, and the game would crash. So Nintendo kind of played with the idea of doing like sort of a return system where it's like, you probably call in, mail it in, wherever. And I guess the president's like, no, we have to recall all these because this is going to destroy our reputation. I also think that came out of caution too, because I feel like that with the gaming industry as sort of what's what we're looking for, as delicate as it was, I think it's a good call to say we're just going to recall and do a make good, because if people buy this and we have a reputation that it's a crap system or it dies, we're dead. Like there's no way people are going to trust us at this point.
And then to think like 10 or 11 years later, they released the N64, which notoriously froze.
Yeah.
And they never recalled that one.
No, that probably was like, there's probably a small percentage of it.
Yeah.
So whatever. They'll deal with the other, call the Nintendo repair number that was emblazoned on the sticker on the underside.
Yeah. Or they just told kids, hit the reset button.
Yeah.
That's why we included one.
That's right. Yeah. Yours was notorious for that.
Yes.
Mine would freeze every now and then, but yours was like guaranteed every time we'd play a game, it would do it at least once during our session. It was awful. Yeah. And I just wanted to have a quick note on the Famicom disk system. This was an add-on that we never got in the US. This was like a floppy disk add-on that was released for the Famicom in 1986, and this one really just, it had the advantages of a floppy disk where it had like more storage space and higher quality sound channel. It also had a rewritable format. This is really cool because in Japan back then, you could take a rewritable Famicom disk system disc, go to like a kiosk, and you'd have a new game written on there, or you could. It's sort of like your own rental system. It's like you go rent a game, get it written to your disc and include it. Apparently, these discs weren't very what's what I'm looking for.
Sturdy?
They weren't sturdy. Yeah, they were prone to like data loss and other issues. So I think that's one major reason why it never came out.
I feel like a lot of computer stuff back then was
absolutely
like easily affected by magnets and stuff like that.
You have the dumbest stuff and you lose all your data on there.
You have a bad solar flare one day and just fries everything.
Yeah, or you have it out in the sun or something like that. And it's on your windowsill and all of a sudden it just cooks the floppy disk or something.
The thing I found interesting years later was that I knew that Famicom came first and that a lot of our Nintendo games came from Japanese games first. I didn't realize how many were on this disc system and then just transferred over to a regular NES cart.
Yeah, and that's what's really interesting about that is like they had like enhanced sound. Like Castlevania 3 sounds really good on the Famicom disc system, but
Zelda 2, I think too.
I think so, and I think even Zelda 1 might have had as well. And it's, for me, Castlevania 3, I think actually sounds better on the NES. Like, I don't know about the music. I don't know what it is, but it's just like that extra sound channel. Like, it sounds better. And it could be just my nostalgia talking because I grew up with that game, right? But it just feels like the soundtrack to me is better on the NES.
Well, there's so much on the NES that's like burned into my head.
That
if I heard anything different, I'm like, this is slightly off.
It may not be totally fair for me to critique it that way because it's like I just love the Castlevania 3 soundtrack, but it's like you think with a higher quality, like it sounds where I'm like, I don't know, there's something better about the grittiness of the NES hardware, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the disc system never came out here because part of it was those poor quality storage discs, and also piracy was a big thing. I don't know how prevalent it was in Japan, but I imagine it wouldn't take long in the US like for this thing to release, and all of a sudden people were just trading floppy disks with games on them, But it was one of the most successful add-ons ever. It sold 4 million units in Japan over its lifetime, and I can't think of another add-on that might have sold that well.
I was about to say you called it one of the best, but I think it is the best.
It must be, because I can't think of another one. Like, I don't know how well Sega CD did in Japan, but I think a Famicom Disk System has to be like in the, if it's number one for sure. But I can't imagine what number 2 is and how close it is in terms of sales.
Yeah, because like I said, these all transferred over into just regular carts on the NES, whereas like other games for other add-ons stuck and stayed on those add-ons. Like, you never saw them transfer over into different ports around the world or anything.
One other big advantage about the NES carts, and this is probably for the Famicom as well, but I think sort of in lieu of a Famicom Disk System add-on, you could add hardware to NES carts. Like, it was more costly, right? Because the producers would have to add like a sound chip or whatever else. But that actually helped enhance all these games because they could afford a better sound channel, more graphics, whatever the case was. And of course, that's something that they probably developed over time, because this was not like a launch thing. Like, it's something that developers caught on as time went on. It's like we could increase the fidelity of these games without needing new hardware or a brand new system. So I think that's sort of like the trade-off. There's like, we didn't get the disc system, but we got some sort of enhancement with the enhancement chips that a lot of these NES games would have. So that's the Famicom release. Now we're getting to the more important meat of the episode here, which is the launch of the NES in the US, which is really why even Deuce and I sort of exist in the gaming space to begin with, is because we grew up with the NES. That was our first system.
Yep.
And this is really important for us because it is the system that got us into gaming. And granted, we were a little bit younger at this point. We weren't there for like in the beginning. We were there like, I probably got my NES in like 89 or something like that, maybe 90.
I mean, oh yeah, for me it was, I'd say, mid to late 89.
Yeah.
I was 4 by then, because when this first launched, and even in its soft launch, I was a baby.
I was a few months old. When this game, when the NES launched in New York. It's pretty crazy to think about that. The system is as old as I am. It's really wild. Yeah. So before I get into the bits and pieces here, I will say you should check out, if you haven't already, the Video Game History Foundation's video on the launch and marketing of the NES. It's called The Untold Story of the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's like 45 minutes. It's really great. It's Frank Cifaldi. He runs the Video Game History Foundation, and he did a really great video on this. I think he also there's also an interview on his channel with some of the people who are in the marketing department at Nintendo at the time, which is really great.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot of great stuff at that YouTube channel, which is the Video Game History Foundation.
I think I've seen that, because that's when I started to learn about like how much marketing had to go into this NES before the launch.
Yeah, it's really incredible that marketing plays such a huge factor, and I think that is really why the Nintendo was so successful. It was because of how they marketed it and how they repositioned it.
Yeah.
Because again, like Nintendo, they're thriving in Japan at this point. Like they have what they call the Famicom boom, so it's doing really well. It's selling really well. They have a ton of great developers, like we mentioned Konami, Capcom, Hudson Soft. All those are firing all cylinders at this point. So it was inevitable that they wanted to release this in the U.S. But again, the U.S. had the issue of the gaming industry is almost non-existent at this point. Like, it still is just a fraction of what it was. So Nintendo, acknowledging the challenges here, had to reposition the Famicom in a totally different way. So the marketing department had to sort of look at this and say, like, well, how can we position this in such a way that's more attractive to more people? And it's also interesting because even before Nintendo released the NES, they were actually going to consider distributing the system with Atari in 1983.
Oh, weird.
Which, can you imagine, like, the Atari Nintendo Entertainment System? The story there apparently is that they were looking to finalize an agreement in June 1993 for a U.S. release, but supposedly, I don't know how true this is, because in Frank Cifaldi's video, he said, like, he didn't really see, he couldn't find a reason why the deal fell through. But one of the things I saw was that at the summer CES, I guess in 1983, somewhere around there, Atari saw that Coleco had been showing an unreleased port for Donkey Kong, and Atari thought that this violated their exclusivity license with Nintendo, and they put the deal on hold. And as a result of this, the Atari CEO, Ray Kasser, he was fired soon after the deal fell apart. And Nintendo was like, all right, well, we're just going to distribute the system on our own. Screw you, Atari.
Yeah.
So that has to be, like, I can't imagine being in that position, like we'll call him a dumb CEO, because that's what he is. It's like you have this deal with Nintendo. You see how successful they are in Japan. This is your chance to sort of revitalize the gaming industry. And you see this deal at CES, and you're like, nope, we're canceling Nintendo.
Yeah. What? And it was all just because Coleco did it unlicensed, right? Like they
just felt like they were impeding on their license,
Yeah.
I guess. And then I don't know if they thought that maybe Nintendo was in cahoots with Coleco. I don't know what the deal really was. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but apparently that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and they put the deal on hold, and Nintendo's like, all right, well, screw you then. We're just going to do it ourselves.
This sounds like the storyline for like a modern drama or something.
It does,
where people aren't communicating and they misinterpret something, and then everything gets blown up.
Yeah, it sounds like like Tetris had that movie. That was like a really embellished story of the history of Tetris.
Yeah.
But it was really fun. But something like that where it's like they have to have these dramatic tropes, but this actually happened apparently, right? So it wasn't until January 1985. This is when they rebranded the Nintendo. It wasn't even the Nintendo at this point, but they rebranded the Famicom, and it was actually called the Advanced Video System at the Consumer Electronics Show in January 1985. This looked more like a high-end PC. They had a ton of peripherals and there's like a keyboard, there's like a tape drive, and retailers were not hot on this because again they were kind of like apprehensive and cautious because of the market crash, and that was still fresh in their minds. And some magazines weren't even confident that Nintendo system could succeed in a post-crash market, which I could see that. It's like, again, like when you see how much it shrunk, like that proposed 97%, I think everyone's going to be skittish and just apprehensive about stocking any kind of video game system, anything remotely close to what you consider an Atari 2600. That led Nintendo to go back to the drawing board once again, and then by June of that year at the Summer Consumer Electronics Show, Nintendo dropped the peripherals like the keyboard and tape drive, and they introduced Rob, the robotic operating buddy, and the new Nintendo Entertainment System that was positioned more as a toy versus like a video game system. Also on top of that, the actual system saw a massive redesign where, the original AVS, it looked like a high-end sort of like PC box from what I understand. Like from what I saw, it just looked like a bigger console. It just looked like something that you probably couldn't store in like your TV stand, like it just looked like it was a big piece of plastic that probably wouldn't be attractive to a lot of people.
Your TV stand probably was already being taken up by a giant, clunky VCR,
or like if
a cable box.
If you had like those old TVs that were like they had the wood, the speakers built in, right?
Yeah.
Where you put stuff on top of it because it was like a table,
like another TV when that one broke down.
Yeah. So they introduced Rob, and then also, like I said, the system got a massive redesign from the original AVS, and now it has it front loaded carts because the Famicom was a top loader. And also had like a very distinct gray colorway. Like it was just two-tone, like almost like black, gray, and like a lighter gray.
Yeah, it was really meant to fit in with your other, like your cable box and your VCR.
And that's exactly
your stereo system.
Yeah, exactly why I designed it that way. Yeah. And also this had detachable controllers, which I was pretty blown away when I was younger. I discovered that the Famicom did not have a detachable controller. Like one of them was hooked straight into the system, which is pretty crazy.
It's weird that they made Rob and they made the NES the way it looks now. And they said it looked more like a toy when like the Famicom really looked like the toy.
It really did. I think also because of the colors, right? It was like a red and yellow, red and kind of white. It looked like a kid's toy, like more than anything else. Like it looked like a typical 80s toy to me.
And when I finally like held one, I've never actually played one, but I've held it. And I'm like, this is like very lightweight and not cheap, but it felt lighter plastic and stuff.
And it might have been because they wanted to keep it affordable, so probably used cheaper plastics, thinner plastic, right? So it makes sense that in the interest of affordability, it probably does feel like a flimsy toy in some sense. It's very toyetic.
But then NES comes along, and that was definitely beefy. It was heavy for my little hands, and even the controller felt more solid, which was helpful when you got mad.
Yeah, that thing was square. You have to be careful when you spike it; doesn't bounce back at you or something like that. Yeah. So like Ducey mentioned, it does look like a VCR, which I didn't really connect, but it made sense when I was a kid. It's like, you front load it, you push it in, you have the little flap that's sort of like the guys there's that's sort of like a dust guard in a sense. I don't know if it really mattered, right? And also they repositioned. So Rob was part of it. And also they changed how they the marketing terms for games. It's really interesting because even when I was a kid and I'd seen it in Temper, I was like, Game Pack Control Deck, what? And I didn't realize that again is like it's a marketing reposition where they didn't want to make this sound like a console or like the Atari. They want to make this stand on its own. So like, this is not like what you think, like buy it kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting that it was called Game Packs, Paks. And then the system was called a control deck because even the early Nintendo systems that they sold, it said control deck on their control deck set.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell is a control deck? Like I've always called it a system or a console, you know?
The gun was the zapper.
Yeah. Yeah. So they basically did their best to, it's crazy because they're selling you video games, but they did their best to try to tell you they're not selling you video games because they really wanted to get away from the marketing crash or the gaming crash and say like, this is an entertainment system. This is a new form of entertainment that the whole family can enjoy and you can all play together with the zapper and Rob the robot.
Play this new entertainment.
Yeah, it's really incredible. So that was summer CES when they revealed the new NES, and I'm sure that had probably much more better reception than the AVS did. And the NES finally had a smaller test launch on October 18th, 1985. This was in New York and LA. Or excuse me, it was in New York first, and then by February 1986 is when it moved to LA, which I think that's crazy to me because now when we think about like system launches, game launches, they're usually worldwide. They're not really sort of staggered out between regions. And it's also now sort of staggered out in like pre-release or limited time, and then they have like a full release like a year later. So I think that's pretty incredible that they did sort of like a test launch, which I would guess maybe is to test the waters and see how it was received.
Yeah, this was special circumstances because they had to fight back against the crash.
Yeah.
Whereas like I think this was probably the one and only time that I've really seen it happen with a soft launch and then a regular one.
Yeah, I can't think of another one.
Even by Super Nintendo, by the next generation, all that was different was different regions got it at different times.
Yes.
But that region then got it all at once. It wasn't like a couple cities.
Yeah, now it's pretty much worldwide. Like I don't think there's any systems that are released in the US or North America first or Japan first. It's a rarity now. It's really interesting how that's changed. Or granted, it's 4 decades of change.
Yeah.
But it's really incredible how it started in New York, small market there, grew to LA. And imagine if you live in LA and your buddy's like, hey, I got this new Nintendo. Like, what the hell is this thing? Like, because you have maybe it's in magazines, but it's just, it's not like, information doesn't go around as fast as it does now back then. So it's like, this is literally like word of mouth in these smaller city launches.
Even like, living where we do here compared to where LA is, and we wouldn't have heard about it while LA was living it up with a Nintendo.
Unless you have family that introduced and you're like, hey, I went to my cousin's house in LA. He has a Nintendo. Like, what? What do you mean?
Which is ironic because I had family in San Diego that had the Nintendo first. But it wasn't because of this launch. It was just they happened to have it first.
That would have been really incredible.
The late 80s.
That would have been really incredible if they did get like one of the early launch systems back then. Yeah. So with that launch, there was LA, New York, and then the full North American launch was apparently around September 1986, which is a little bit later than I expected. And then the initial deluxe set in 1985, it was $180, which is $676 today. So, gaming has always been kind of expensive in different regards. I always think I don't want to say it's funny, but, I always think it's interesting when people are critical of game prices and console prices, which they should be, but, they act like it's something new. I'm like, no, it's just relative to what the time was.
Yeah.
Like $676, that's what a PS5 costs now, what a Series X does now, right? Like that's just unfortunate, and it's still really expensive. It's not like a 3DO, which was $700 in 1993, right?
Yeah.
that is objectively expensive as all hell.
Thousands now.
Yeah. So the deluxe set originally included the NES, 2 controllers, the Zapper, Rob the Robot, and Duck Hunt and Gyromite, which Gyromite's like that special Rob game that works only with Rob. I don't think you could play with just controllers as far as I know. I can't remember.
I mean, I guess you could if you just had a second
if
player.
You had 2 of them.
Yeah. Because all he was doing was like pushing. You could push on Rob. You didn't need the little gyro.
That's right.
things.
Yeah. I would love to have a Rob robot someday. I know it's getting expensive, but I know it doesn't work well. It's to me, it's such a cool piece of gaming history.
There's only like 2 games for him, isn't there?
I believe so. There, if that's, there has to be at least 2, I would think.
There's that other one where like you're the little scientist.
Was it Stackums or something?
I don't know, but he like pushed a button and then like the little gates would open up so you could go.
Yeah. I want to say that was called Stack Up or Stacker. I don't know what it was called, but yeah, it might be those are the only 2 games. Yeah. So the larger 1986 launch had the control deck set, as they called it, with 2 controllers and Super Mario Brothers for $100. That's $375 today. So that's a little bit more reasonable. It's like a little bit cheaper than a Switch. And then 1986 1986 saw the launch of the Master System in the US, which was a follow-up to the SG-1000. And then for comparison's sake, that was $200, which pretty pricey in 1986.
Yeah, compared to the control deck set was down to 100 already.
Yeah.
And you're getting, I don't know what the Master System came with, but this one came with Mario.
I think it came with 2 controllers and then, probably some
Alex Kidd or something.
Yeah, Alex Kidd might have been one of the launch games on there. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, which, great platformer, but it's not Mario. I do enjoy Alex Kidd.
But like today, 200 is practically 600.
Yeah.
And the Nintendo was only 375.
But again, like that's the huge difference. There's like the Master System was like in uncharted waters. And, by the time the control deck set out, that was like more of the launch. Maybe by then they were like, we're recouping some of our costs here. So we can make this a little bit more cheaper than what it was. Plus, you don't have Rob the Robot. I don't think this one had the Zapper just yet.
Not just yet. They had a gun eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So this is sort of like the core system that made it cheaper, which to me is like, that's great. Like, $100 in the 80s, that's totally reasonable. And by 1988, this is the set that I probably got and probably most people got. This is the deluxe set. Actually, excuse me, this is the action set that replaced the deluxe set. And this was $100, which is a great value for this because you got 2 controllers, you got the Zapper now, and you got a dual cart of Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt, which, God, like when I got that, it was over for me. Like that's what really just birthed my love for gaming.
For the longest time, I thought this was the only way you played those games. I didn't know there were individual releases of Mario and Duck Hunt.
Yeah, it's really exactly. I just assumed this was it. This was the combo pack you got with your system when you bought it. But I was 4 years old, so what the hell did I know? Right?
But I just remember that black screen where Mario's on the top and Duck Hunt's on the bottom, and you push select, I think, to switch between them, and it was just burned into my brain. Like, wow.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was actually doing or playing, but I knew that I loved it, and also my dad was playing with me, which is really cool because he played the Atari, like he got that when it came out, and he wasn't like a big gamer or anything, but like he enjoyed some games, and Duck Hunt was his game because he just thought it was so cool to shoot the Zapper at the CRT screen, and, shoot the ducks and get a high score.
I mean, I was so young that like, luckily Mario was very basic. Go to the right.
Yeah.
Just always go to the right. So I could do that. I didn't have to get mushrooms and fire flowers, but it was awesome when you did, because all of a sudden now you push the other button and fire takes away the guys in front of you. And my dad, he was, he played Atari when he had it. And then when he got this, I know it hooked him, because I've told this story before where like I was in bed late at night and then I woke up to the sounds of Mario and I kind of stumble out to the living room, and I don't know what time it is, but I know it's like lights out for everybody, and he's just sitting there playing the game still.
He's glued to it. He's just like testing it out for his Prince, where he's like, I'm gonna show him exactly how it's done, because then he'll be like the smartest dad ever at that point.
He always likes to say too that it's a good thing the original Mario didn't take quarters, because
oh my god,
we would be broke trying to get through the first world.
That would have been a whole nother nightmare there. Yeah. So let's see. I'll get through some launch games here, because this is a much more robust launch than the Famicom one had. Like Famicom, again, it had those 3 games. It was arcade ports of Popeye, Donkey Kong Jr., and Donkey Kong, right? So that's like the 3 you got. I will say Load Runner was apparently a huge game over there. That game was also enhanced by the Famicom disk system, where I think you could technically save levels on there.
Oh, wow.
So I know that was like a key game there, but for the US launch, we had about 17 games, including Mario Brothers. So there was like 10-Yard Fight, Baseball, Clue Clue Land, Duck Hunt, Excite Bike, Golf, Gyromite, Hogan's Alley, Ice Climber, Kung Fu, Pinball, Soccer, Stack Up. That was the other Rob game. Yeah, I knew it was something like that. Tennis, Wild Gunman, and Wrecking Crew. So much larger lineup. I would say obviously much better, because you have a lot more variety there, which I think was probably their sort of intent.
And very distinct. If anybody out there sees one of those boxes that was all black with the picture of the actual game graphics and then the name of the game in some sort of color, you knew that was a launch game.
You knew that those were like the earliest NES games available. Yeah. I think I only have one. I think I have Excite Bike. I don't know if I have any other ones, but those are NES covers are memorable for a lot of reasons for me, and those are like among the most memorable because they're so distinct, and you can usually tell what the system launched with. So at the end of the NES's run, it ended up selling around 61 million units worldwide, and that includes multiple like re-releases, bundles, and revisions, which we'll talk about the top loader in a moment here. It was eventually discontinued around August 1995, and in total there was around 1,062 games released across like Japan, US, Europe, which pretty huge library, because that's a lot of freaking games. And I think in the US there's probably around 750, I think, something like that.
Wow, that's still a lot for Nintendo. Like when you consider the N64 as I think 296 in
Something
the US.
like that, yeah. So you figure that 3 times the size
Yeah.
of the N64, and it lasted because the N64 was what 96 to 2001, 5 years, and this lasted almost 10, right?
Mhm.
So it's massive difference there, yeah. So that's really the launch of the NES. That's really the main story of the gaming industry crashing. Nintendo revitalizing the gaming industry because it's a lot of people say it saved it, which it technically did,
Yeah.
right? Because at this point, like the gaming industry, had it not been for Nintendo, probably would just petered out. I mean, Sega probably would have done something with the Genesis and Master System, but I think the gaming landscape would be so different if it was just the Master System and Genesis leading the charge. And also, we won't have the console wars, which also means that we probably won't have a ton of those great 16-bit games that existed because Sega and Nintendo were at each other's throats trying to make the best software and hardware available at the time.
Yeah, that's the true spirit of capitalism, which you don't see too often anymore, is like they really were trying to outdo each other, and they knew that it could easily go one way or the other. Nobody was trying to do these monopolies that all the companies
corporate consolidation, all the other garbage that runs rampant now.
If you think about it, like it definitely saved the whole industry because you said by 84 or 85 in Japan alone, Nintendo already had the 90%.
Yeah.
When it came into the US and after 86, I think it was closer to 95.
Yes, 95 or 96 if I recall.
Yeah, percent. And it wasn't even until like the Genesis comes out as the next generation in 89, and Nintendo, an 8-bit system, still had a stranglehold for another couple years.
Yeah. Well, it's also because you figure like the Nintendo had a bigger library. Games were getting really good by this point because that's the thing too. You always consider with any system at launches, like those early games, like the first year or two, is really just developers trying to find their footing with the hardware, and that's when you start to get the really good stuff and the stuff that looks really impressive and sounds impressive. So it makes sense that by the Genesis release, Nintendo was really the only game in town. Like there was the Master System. I think TurboGrafx was about to come out in 89. I can't recall, but again, like those are just fractions compared to Nintendo's stronghold on the gaming industry.
Yeah, and by 89, you're finally getting, what is it? 89 was Mega Man what?
I think it was
3?
2? Was 2? I think
2
3 was
80,
90.
Yeah, 2 was 88. And Castlevania was coming into its own, like the second one I think was by 89.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
yeah, because 3 was I think 90 or 91.
By 89, Genesis might come out, but Nintendo is finally getting a hold of like great music and great graphics and background graphics and all that other sort of thing, and new and innovative controls rather than just go right, jump.
yeah, just the basic platformers.
Yeah,
really, because arcade games by nature are simple, right? Because
one screen basically.
They're meant to be like one screen, or even if they're more expansive than that, they're meant to eat your quarters. So they're just kind of like these bite-sized experiences. It wasn't until Nintendo really found its footing. Like you started getting like Final Fantasy and RPGs became a big thing. Like Dragon War was a huge thing in Japan. We've talked about that a little bit. So it's just gaming, games were evolving to being more than just like these bite-sized arcade experiences at home. They started becoming more forms of entertainment. There was narratives and stories, being folded in there. So it's really incredible when you consider like how dire the gaming situation was in the early 80s, and then the Nintendo really just revolutionized and changed everything.
Did Batman come out with the movie in 89, or did it come out like a year later in 90?
I want to say it was after. I don't think it was like a tie-in.
Yeah.
It was probably like a little bit after, I think.
But still, like, look at how great that looked and sounded.
Yes, that's a Sunsoft game too.
Yeah.
Like they have, I will always say it, Fester's Quest had great music. Had that Sunsoft signature. Same with like Blaster Master. Like Sunsoft was, I would like to say they're probably an underappreciated developer overall in the Nintendo, because they always had great music. Graphics were usually pretty good. Like maybe their games weren't top tier all the time.
I'd say they were top because of those two things, but then they always made them very difficult.
Yeah. Like Fester's Quest.
Yeah. They were, I mean, we joked about it, but there's that recent study saying that Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Genesis, they made the generation that grew up with that like more resilient and better at problem solving and stuff compared to games now.
Yeah, you're more sort of what's the word for, like you're more proficient in tech, right? Because you're using your hands. It's an interactive kind of medium. So it's like it's one of those things where you are using problem solving skills. Like I probably learned how to read better because of certain Nintendo games, right? Like
I know I've also told this story where I learned to read on a Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
So, but you're also learning like not only problem solving but patience. Like no matter how many times Mario falls down the hole, you have to just like hit continue and start over and try to get over it.
It's like a compulsion. You're like, I can get past this.
Yeah,
I know I can do it this time. It's always been the case with any game like that, where it's like you're that close to being a boss or a section. You're like, I can do it. It might take another 15 tries, but you can do it. Yeah. All right, should we start reminiscing about some of our game highlights here and some other notable things like accessories and the infamous top loader?
Yeah. I'd say, there are just so many gaming memories for the Nintendo. Like, series got their starts here, and we're still talking about them today with, Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom. Mario Odyssey is, like, the latest one, but it all started with Mario Brothers. It's just so insane, kind of, to me, to see how far it's come, and it's still going.
Well, I think that's... because for me, I love nostalgia, obviously, but I also really love just technology in general. It's always one of those things where I love looking back at technology because obviously that informs future technology, even now, like what we're looking at with certain things that come out today. But I always think it's incredible when you look at some of these games and how by today's standards, they're super primitive, right? Like to me, I forgot what the example my brother said, but he said something like how the NES to us, in terms of age, is relative to like what it was with my dad when the NES came out and the Atari for him or something like that.
Oh yeah,
right. Just in terms of like how far of a year gap it was, and to me, it never feels that way. But obviously, you and I are we're 40 now, and these games came out like in '88. Castlevania came out in like '86, and it's like still one of my favorite series. And like you see the evolution of that series from what it was, and like this crazy sort of twist on like universal horror monsters, right? Like traditional monsters like Frankenstein, the Mummy, and Dracula is like the main villain of that game. And they turned this whole sort of horror aspect of this platforming, just brutally difficult vampire killing family into a franchise that's outlasted most other franchises for like the last 4 years. Legend of Zelda is obviously like a huge one for us because I grew up with Link to the Past more than anything because I was just older by then. I understood the game more. But, to me, when I think back to like the original Legend of Zelda, I'm like, that was an open world game, right? Like it's not, maybe now more people regard it as such, but back then it was just sort of like an adventure game because open world wasn't exactly coined in it. It was just, you're out in Hyrule exploring and you were encouraged to like burn down bushes or bomb walls. And that's a whole other problem. So I'm thinking for us too, it's like that we kind of had to learn like, it's like, let's try these things one after another to kind of figure this out, which a lot of games weren't doing that. They weren't encouraging exploration.
I've heard stories of people who didn't have magazines like Nintendo Power or strategy guides or even like friends on the playground. And they would go like square by square and bomb everything. And they would even draw on their own handmade maps.
Yeah.
This is where a cave is. This is the bush that burns. And some of that stuff was so like out of left field. I think one of the dungeons you have to play a whistle to drain a lake.
Yeah.
Like nowadays that could be a thing that's in a Zelda game, but you're going to have like 3 different NPCs telling you should try this. Whereas back then they were just like, well, you got a whistle. Go use it somewhere.
Yeah, you're like here's the tools you have in your possession.
Yeah.
And there's a solution here. You just have to figure it out. We're not going to tell you really how to do it, which sucks. But at the same time, like that was the thing back then. Like you learned by experimenting, which was the big thing. It's like you knew you have a problem with some sort of puzzle in front of you. How can I figure that out? Plus, the world was pretty massive for its time with Zelda. Like it was 8 dungeons, and Hyrule felt like a gigantic place to explore. There's things like it's like you had the enemies flying around the Hyrule, but then you also had like I guess Hylia Lake. What is technically what it would be back then? I don't know what it was, like stuff like that, where again it makes you feel like you're in this other world that doesn't exist, but it exists in some sort of fantasy world.
And outside of the software itself, like it was innovative in that it was the first game with a save system,
That's
battery
true.
save.
Yeah, that was a whole new thing.
Like Nintendo was a lot of these origin stories, like the D-pad and stuff like that. Even when they get into Super Nintendo, then you now have 4 face buttons and the 2 shoulder buttons, which all other systems and controllers have expanded on. It's just incredible to think that it all started with 2 buttons and a D-pad.
Yeah, and a start and select and a very square D-pad, which they did change with the top loader because it was always great because one of the more notorious things that Nintendo was known for back then was the flickering frickin' magenta screen.
Ah, yes.
Which, as a kid, I just attribute to like, oh, maybe this cart's dusty. Maybe I'll clean it out. I'll blow into it or something, or use a Q-tip to get in there.
Famously, people everywhere know about the blowing of the cartridges.
And it turns out it's really just a contact issue with the pin connector in the NES, which I later replaced like in the 2000s because I found out you could do that. I went on eBay and I got like a pin connector. It was like, $20 where it was. And I replaced it myself, which made me feel proud because like I'm not, back then I was on like 14, 15, I wasn't really tinkering with electronics too much. But yeah, it was just the pin connector. I guess with the seating or something that was also affecting it because of the spring.
So did you realize, and I don't know if this is fully true, but I think I've seen it happen. It's like you didn't have to push the game down in a Nintendo system. When you pushed it in, that's all it needed.
I don't know if I've tried that. I can't remember because I feel like I have heard that before.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh my God. And so now they've shown like sort of see-through graphics of like what happens when you push it down. It sort of like bends the connectors a little.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so after time, if you've just been playing it for
makes sense.
Days and years, it's going to start to get a little warped or a little damaged.
Because if it's supposed to go in straight and you're like warping up and down, it's just kind of like loosen it there,
Also, when I was little, it was hard as hell to get the games out, so I was sitting there like constantly jiggling it up and down to really pull and yank on it. When the top loader came, that fixed a lot of issues. I actually have one, or my dad still does at his house, and he got it mostly because we were having that issue where it seemed like you had to blow on more and more games to get them to work. And so finally we got this top loader. It was cheap. It was double-digit dollars in like 95, 96, whenever we ended up getting it. And it took away all that connector problem. You just pushed it down like a Super Nintendo, and it would connect pretty solidly.
I was really impressed because I remember when you got it and going to your house, I'm like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
Like I don't think I even heard the top loader exist until you got it. And I'm pretty sure you got like a Toys R Us or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you put a game and I was like, oh, it works.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
I was like, remember this game that we could barely get to play like once out of 4 times? Now, boom, every time.
But it's hilarious because I vividly remember bringing my Game Genie to your house, and that's how we discovered that they locked it out. So that's another crazy thing is I even mentioned it either when Nintendo for one, curb piracy and to curb unlicensed games is they had a lockout chip in their games, and that was actually it would work with the system as well where if it didn't detect that chip, it wouldn't play the game. So with the Game Genie, they had a lot of I think there was even lawsuits with Galoob back then because they were arguing that it was technically modifying their games.
Yeah.
So it's crazy with the top loader, like, you know what? We're going to design this in such a way that the Game Genie just doesn't work because Game Genie, you'd have to slot the game in it and then push it into the NES. Actually, that makes sense why you couldn't have to spring it down because the NES, the Game Genie would hang out. So there you go. That makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know why I didn't put 2 and 2 together because we would play Game Genie a lot with the old deck, and all you had to do was push it in. Whereas when you got the top loader, it just didn't fit anymore.
Yeah, I remember we were trying to jam it in.
It was like too loose or something, and it wasn't connecting. I was like, uh-oh.
I think it was with the width or something. I think it was with how the cart fits probably on the pin connector. I think the Game Genie was like, they probably purposely housed it in such a way that I would just block it. And I remember doing that at your house. Like, oh crap, I don't even know what we were playing. I just remember laughing. I was like, oh yeah, I guess it doesn't work anymore on the top loader.
It was I can't remember what game it was, but it was definitely one that we always seemed to play with Game Genie. And now we have to play it the old-fashioned way. No.
Yeah, the top loader is really great. If you can get a hold of one now, I don't know how much they probably go for. I'm sure it's like $200, I would guess, because I know it's not cheap.
That would be insane because it didn't even launch at that price.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of these things that are expensive, like, Castlevania Legends didn't launch at $800 complete or what it is now. But yeah, the top loader, it's a great system if you don't buy like an analog. I forgot what analog called theirs. I don't know if it's like a Duo. I don't know what the hell they call it, but they made their own Nintendo-like system. But the top loader is a great option if you want to spend like a couple $100 and it still works really, really well.
Or if you want to just try to find the controller that came with it. Weirdly, it only came with one controller back in the day.
Yeah, that's probably their way to keep costs down too, because it's newer hardware in a sense.
And they figured you still had your old rectangle controllers.
Also true, yeah.
But this one they called it the dog bone because it was 2 round sides on a straight one, and it angled the buttons. I can't tell you how like such a small little change actually helps, but they angled the buttons, the A and B buttons, and they made it round. and it's just way more comfortable in the hands.
It is, because also
as you got older and your hands got bigger.
Well, even just for me, like the squareness of the NES pad is fine, right? But definitely it's square, right?
Yeah.
And also I think the buttons were concave, and I think on the dog button they were converse, right? They were
Yeah.
upright. So I think that's just they took every opportunity to redesign the controller, and I think it was for the better because those are much more comfortable. It's just the NES regular controller, just they're nostalgic. That's really the big thing for me, as uncomfortable as it may be. Let's see. Anything else you want to cover, Ducey, before we head out for the launch here? Anything else you want to reminisce about on the NES or the launch or its impacts?
One of the funny things you listed on here, just as maybe a brief topic, is something that we were talking about with Vito, because you guys recently did Die Hard.
Oh yeah, all the licensed games.
There are so many licensed games. We were like, oh, we should do more of these episodes where we talk about a movie or a show and then the game that tied in with it. And then we just realized, oh, we are making a huge list.
Well, and he was, he was going off on it too, which is great because like there's always those ideas. I'm like, we can't make a full episode on Gilligan's Island.
Yeah. Unless we talk about season after season.
Yeah,
and then a little bit about the game.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing is because, like I said, Atari had like Porky's. They had like the Quaker Oats game. I'm sure they had Halloween, like the horror movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Those are all very expensive games now. Nintendo carried that tradition where a lot of TV shows and movies release games. Most were not good.
No. Especially when most were handled by LJN.
That's also true. LJN was a big thing back then. And then also it's just a lot of those games had tight deadlines to get out for like a holiday season or try to time it with the movie release, or some instances like we talked about Die Hard where it came out 4 years after the fact, which, Die Hard 2 had been out and Die Hard 3 was not, I don't think it was even announced yet in 92. I don't think it was a blip on the radar. But, you have that contend with where it's like these licensed games are often based on timing, where it's like they have to strike while iron's hot with the popularity of a show or movie, because otherwise it's like you're kind of losing out on sales.
I do feel like Nintendo had a little more leeway with that compared to after GoldenEye and the N64.
Yeah.
Because GoldenEye was 2 years later. And since that became such a big hit, that's when they were really like, we got to do these with the releases.
Yeah.
Whereas Nintendo, you have Gilligan's Island, which was probably like 20 years after the show.
Yeah, I don't even know when that show ended because there was also the Gilligan's Island movie, which I don't know when that came out. That was early 80s or late 70s.
Early 80s, I want to say.
Yeah, I only knew about that because my dad. We got Gilligan's Island on NES because of my dad. We saw it at the video store
and I doubt that game was tying in with the movie.
Yeah, it's not. I barely know how to play that game. It's so freaking weird.
But other ones like
Three Stooges,
Knight Rider.
Yeah, Knight Rider had one. Airwolf.
Airwolf. Yeah, Three Stooges. When was like the last time a Three Stooges
I don't even know.
show was on before the NES?
I unapologetically love that game though. My brother and I played that a lot because it's just a minigame collection with a pretty dark story of like the this guy, I think it's a landlord's trying to evict all the kids and the people from this orphanage. So Three Stooges have to play mini games to collect money.
Yeah, wasn't it the orphanage that they grew up in or something?
Something like that.
They have to save it.
It's crazy they had that much of a narrative for this, but the mini games are not great. But my brother and I played the hell out of that game.
Yeah, they really wanted to tap into. I feel like those were probably for our parents because
they were.
If we were going to get a Mario and our parents are like, "What the heck is a Mario?" They were like, "Oh, look at this! Three Stooges, Gilligan's Island, Flintstones, and Jetsons." Like
those were all great too. Those Flintstones games were really fun. I didn't get to play the rare one, which I think was Surprise at Dinosaur Peak. I have the Legend of Dino and Hoppy. I think is one I have. Something like that. But that's the reason why we got Three Stooges and Gilligan's Island and a lot of those games was because my dad saw them. He loved the show. And they were cheap at Video Express. It was like this little local video store we had. And that's where I got a lot of my used Nintendo games back then because they're always dirt cheap. They're always like $5 and it was easy to convince my dad, hey, go get this. And if it was a movie-based thing, it was that much easier. So I remember getting Total Recall there, which really bad game as well. But we got it because it was cheap and had Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I don't remember how we got a bunch of the earliest games. I was so young that it was definitely up to the discretion of my dad. Or both my parents to say like, oh, that might not be appropriate for him, or oh, hey, we'll play this when he's in bed or something. But I just know that we got a lot of ours at Toys R Us. that great, take the tag off the wall and go over to the little
One of my
kiosk.
favorite experiences as a kid.
And then surprisingly, we got a lot at Macy's down in the basement. They had a whole section.
I remember that basement.
Nintendo. Like they dimmed the lights like it was a back room of something.
Yeah,
but
it was like a porn store or something, but just games.
All it was Nintendo and Game Boy games over there.
Yeah, I remember we got ours. It was mostly at Video Express. There was also the Warehouse, which you know how much I loved the Warehouse back then.
Yep.
And also there was a small little shack. I don't know if it was a pawn shop. I don't know what it was, but it was called Dr. Skies. I don't know if you ever went there back then.
I didn't go, but I know a lot of people who would mention that name.
Yeah, so he was a really cool guy. He was just, I'm assuming it's a pawn shop because he had like, guitars, cassettes. He had like a whole bunch of different stuff. The only thing I was looking at was his case of games. And that's where I got a lot of my NES games. Like I remember seeing Mega Man 2 there because I got Mega Man 3 at Video Express.
Nice.
I think it might have been around. Yeah, I knew you then. So I had probably played Mega Man 2. And also, I guess we could talk about that too, is like sort of the social aspect because, we made a lot of friends at school, us included, because of gaming in one way or another. Like, I met Vito in first grade and I vividly remember he was wearing like a Mario long sleeve shirt sitting in front of me. And we started talking about games back then. We were like 6 years old, right?
Yeah, I don't even know how we started talking about games, but I mean, you and I were like the earliest adopters of trading, swapping for a brief amount of time. And that was another helpful thing because if we couldn't afford all these games, we could at least trade with friends who also had different selections.
Yeah, you're always telling your buddy, like, well, I got this, and that. It's like, well, what you guys? Like, all right, well, I want to borrow that. It's like, all right, well, can I borrow this for that? Like, it was almost like you're bartering.
It was definitely a one-for-one deal.
Yeah, I do remember sometimes, like, you'd rent, when am I saying rent?
Yeah.
But, like, your buddies would rent 2 for 2 or something.
Yeah.
Like, it was almost like an even trade because, like, I don't know, my uncle, you know how big of a clown he could be back then, but it's like, he always think like my friends would steal my games. So
I know.
like things just like, you have to exchange the even and out, make sure it's like, I'm see him at school every day. He's not going to do anything with this.
You have to hold their game hostage.
Yeah.
If you want to see yours.
And write your name on it as well. Make sure you put your name on it. Which some of mine still have on there.
That's a huge thing just across the nation because look at all the used games we get or we might see.
I just got one. I got Ghostbusters on Genesis last night. It had someone's name written on it. And the guy at the retro store, he actually got some of it off using a method I know about using a Q-tip with alcohol and an Expo marker. I guess the dry erase marker helps the ink come off.
Oh, wow.
So you got most of it off. I have to try it for the rest. But yeah, that was the common thing. You write your name on the game so that whatever buddy you lent it out to would return it or something.
Yeah.
Like that would stop them,
Yeah. This isn't going to go anywhere else.
Yeah. So yeah, we have a lot of memories. We made a lot of friends back then. Of course, like us, we've known each other for 34 years. And I've technically known Vito for 35 because I met him right before I met you. So it was like 91, right? So it's crazy. And then again, 3 decades later, we're still playing games. We're still borrowing each other's games to some extent. I'm like, you want to borrow this, Deuce? And you're like, hey, can I borrow this? Like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll see you in 2 weeks or something.
Yep.
So yeah, that's I think the Nintendo has done a lot for us. And it's also like one of our, it's still one of our favorite hobbies. Like we talk about games all the time still. And I think the influence of Nintendo is always sort of properly acknowledged because I think a lot of people, even developers now, probably would not be making the games they are today had not been for the original Nintendo.
Well, look at the names we mentioned in this, like Capcom and Namco,
Konami.
They're still going.
Yeah,
I mean,
still making amazing games.
Konami dropped off a little bit, but they're making a comeback.
They're doing well. Like they're actually releasing games now. Like they got the Metal Gear Solid collection. They have Darwin's Paradox, which looks pretty cool.
Did they do Silent Hill?
They didn't develop it, but they published it.
Okay,
because it's Team Blooper. I always forget their freaking name.
Bloober, I think.
Bloober. Yeah, because I think there is a Blooper team as well. I can't remember.
Hilarious because Blooper is also the squid in Mario.
Yeah, there you go. Loose tie there. Yeah. So it's incredible that a lot of those developers still exist. But again, like this gaming podcast really exists in one way because of the Nintendo and how we grew up with that there. Ducey, any final words for or about the Nintendo or its lasting impact on you, even though we kind of did a whole episode on its lasting impact on us? I'm
just glad that I know it's not the same as the Virtual Console on Wii, but I'm glad that the Switch has the Nintendo aspect and it's the free one. Like you don't have to have the extra online capability.
Oh, that's right. You just have to have the basic membership. That's right.
If you have the basic one, you can play these classic games. And I know a lot of kids these days are like, oh my God, how did you play this? But it's good to know your roots. And Mario, all the Marios are still really fun.
There's a lot of real playable stuff. The Mega Man games hold it really well, especially the later ones. Yeah, Zelda. Castlevania, I love that. It is harder, but some of those games are still really interesting for some. But there's a lot on the Nintendo that still holds up very, very well, especially like some of the later games that we didn't get to we didn't dive into, but I'm sure we'll do episodes with at some point.
Yeah.
But a lot of those later Nintendo games are really, really impressive. Like they looked great. Like Kirby is one of the most impressive Nintendo games I've ever seen. And granted, that's like a later release. I think it was like 92, 93, maybe even 94.
94, I think.
Right? It's a pretty late game, yeah.
Look at how excited I was for the Disney Afternoon Collection on Switch when I had already played through all of it on Xbox, but I was like, I will play these again.
You don't double dip too often. Like I'm a double dipper for sure.
Yeah.
Vito's a double dipper. I'm even a triple dipper sometimes with Street Fighter. But yeah, for a game for you to double dip, it's really, really good or something that you have a lot of funness for. And Disney Afternoon Collection is like, that is your Street Fighter equivalent to me, essentially.
Thank you, Capcom.
Yeah, exactly. Capcom's for both of us. Yeah. All right, friends. Well, if you have any memories out there you want to share with us about the Nintendo or any cool stuff, you can reach out to us at LegionGamingPod@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram where I post collections or some of my collection and videos and all kinds of random stuff that I think is probably cool or funny. That's at Legion Gaming Podcast. What else? Oh, next episode we're doing is Duke Nukem 3D. So keep your ears out for that one. I think
that's going to be, I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, we're doing that to celebrate its 30th anniversary because technically it was released, I think January was like its shareware version or something like that. And the official full release when they had like all the episodes was like, I think it was like late April. So by the time we get to episode 86, we'll be just celebrating its 36th anniversary. Or excuse me, 30th anniversary.
30th, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Wait, is it 30? Yeah.
30th. Yeah, 96,
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really fun game because you know how much I love Doom, and Duke is like your Doom in a sense.
For real.
And Duke did a lot of incredible things after Doom that really influenced a lot of games, are still influencing a lot of games today too, as far as like the immersion and level of detail and all the cool stuff it did. Plus, Duke's one-liners, which are very hilarious and appropriate for the 90s, maybe not so much now.
They walked parallel paths, Doom and Duke.
They did. Doom and Duke sounds like a book. All right, Ducey, any final words for friends who are probably going to go off and play more Nintendo?
Press start to... Oh, it's game over.